to run this session for SaaS companies because, as we are all aware, it is SaaS companies that help us to automate. But what do SaaS companies do for their own automation? We thought it would be an interesting perspective to cover. I have with me a stellar panel, and I'd like to introduce them. Firstly, we have with us Atif Chadda, who is the CFO of Peelworks. So Peelworks is invested in by used to be invested in by IAN and now invested in by Chirate Ventures, Equanimity, HDFC Bank, Unilever Ventures, Inventus, etc. They are in a very interesting business. They provide a SaaS solution to the local Kirana stores, to the offline retailers. And it will be very interesting to kind of hear your perspectives, Atif. Atif's company currently kind of covers about 20,000 to 30,000 retailers, covers about 10 cities, and their plans are kind of to scale it up to 100,000 retailers in about 100 cities. Atif himself is ex-Hindustan Times, Systema, Renaissance, and Macquarie, and he has got his MBA from IIM Bangalore. So welcome on board, Atif. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Venkat.
Our next panelist is Narasimha Reddy, who is the CFO, Head of Strategy, and a board member of MoEngage. MoEngage is in the user analytics and engagement space. They specialize in mobile marketing, and they provide a personalized experience at scale to a number of Fortune 500 companies and several startups. MoEngage is invested in by 8Roads, by Matrix, by Venture East, Helion. They are featured in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Narasimha is an alum of IIT Chennai, and he has worked earlier with Continuum Energy and with Malabar Capital. Welcome to the panel, Narasimha. Honored to have you.
Thanks, Venkat. Glad to be here.
Last but not the least, our third panelist is Rajiv Saini, who is the Senior Finance Director and the Global Controller for Freshworks. Freshworks obviously is a unicorn invested in by Sequoia, by Axel, by SteadView, Google Capital, Tiger Global, etc. They have been very active in making acquisitions of several smaller companies in the recent past. They have over 150,000 active customers for their SaaS CRM solutions. So they specialize in the entire contract lifecycle management space. Rajiv is an alum of FMS. He's got an MBA from FMS. He's also a CPA, and he's earlier worked with TFS, with Bharti Airtel, with Dell, Hughes, and Nestle. Welcome on board, Rajiv. Thank you so much for joining the panel today. Rajiv, you're probably on mute.
Yeah. Thanks, Venkat. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So a quick housekeeping announcement. So we should be ending the session at about 7:05 p.m. This session is being recorded. It's also being live streamed on YouTube and LinkedIn. A copy of this recording will be available on your YouTube channel. So just in case you want to kind of go back, make notes, etc. All the views expressed in this 1 hour session are being made by the panelists in their personal capacity. They do not necessarily represent the views of the organizations that they work for. You have been muted by Murtuza and Madhuri. However, we would like to kind of keep this session participative. So please do send in your comments, your feedback, your inputs, any questions that you might have. We will try and kind of take it as we go along. Please do ask your questions in the chat box. The focus of this session is really going to be more on the implementation side. So what the objective of the session is to kind of leave behind some practically implementable ideas that you can carry back from the panelists. My request to the panelists would be to kind of provide the names of the tools, if possible, quantify the impact that is kind of generated for you in your respective companies, so that the audience here could possibly try and replicate their experience, obviously in their own context, after this webinar is over. Yeah, so with those opening remarks, I'd like to invite the panelists to share a quick introduction to the business model of their companies, and also to share what has been their automation journey and experience, say in the last 12 to 18 months time. So maybe if I could start with you, Narasimha, followed by Atif, and then with Rajiv. Over to you, Narasimha.
Thanks, Venkat, and hi everyone. Hope everyone is doing good and staying safe. So I think Venkat has already given a brief introduction about what we do, but just to add on top of it, we are essentially an insights-led engagement platform. We help consumer companies interact with their users based on their behavior by orchestrating communications across different digital channels, right? So, for example, let's say you buy an iPhone in Flipkart, and Flipkart would probably send you a communication on email showing the recommended products that you would be probably willing to buy, right? So the idea is to essentially increase the lifetime value of the users of our customers, thereby increasing their revenue, right? So we work with across various companies in various segments. We work with the likes of Flipkart, Ola, Oyo, Big Basket to Airtel, Times Internet, and so on in India. And we are essentially a subscription software. We charge our customers based on some metric called monthly active users, and it's a recurring revenue model. It's purely recurring revenue model, which essentially we bank upon. So coming to the topics that probably I would want to briefly cover today. One thing is I would probably focus on little more on how automation helped us increase the predictability of our revenue, thereby which essentially gives you the overall control of your cash flow, right? I mean, if you can't predict your revenue well, and your costs are more or less linear and more or less predicted, you can't predict your net cash burn, right? So increasing the predictability of revenue is something which I would probably talk about when it comes to automation. And just getting into deeper into this specific point. So if you look at the life cycle of any SaaS company, right? Typically in our domain or in most of the SaaS companies, you have a sales funnel covering from lead to MQL to SQL to opportunities to closure, which means when the company is getting or when the company is introduced to your company, which is in our case Mo Engage, that qualifies as a lead, and it goes on to your entire funnel before it actually gives you revenue, right? So we use various tools to automate the tracking of this entire funnel. A couple of tools which I want to mention is HubSpot and Salesforce as we use. HubSpot helps us track and automate the marketing funnel, and Salesforce uses us to understand and help us get better prediction on how the opportunity closure happens. And by tracking this funnel, the entire funnel, what we essentially are trying to achieve, or what the problem that we are trying to solve, is better predict the revenue, right? It is so for us, I can probably get into some of the specifics on how we track. There are various channels in SaaS companies that people get leads from. It could be marketing led, which is typically called as inbound. It could be SDR led, which is typically called as outbound. It could be AE led, which is typically the quota carrying sales reps generating their own leads. And it could be partnerships and referrals, right? So, and all these leads across different channels carry different conversion rates. So it is when you try to understand the data, it becomes very complex if you're supposed to do it manually, right? So if you're getting 100 leads, for example, through outbound channel, how many of those leads are getting into the next stage, which is marketing qualified lead? How many leads are getting into the next stage, which is sales qualified lead? So it is very important to automate the entire funnel, and we do this through HubSpot and Salesforce, which helps you at the end of the day. This helps you understand what are the sales cycles across different sales channels or different channels where you could generate leads from. And this also helped us predict, or rather I would say, when we started 2020, we had come up with a plan, and I think all as a company had come up with a different plan, and post COVID we had come up with a plan, right? And now we just closed our year, which is our financial year, which is calendar year for us. And I would say, even post COVID world, we ended up with a less marginal error. We ended up with less than 10% of the marginal error to what we had predicted in the post-COVID world, right? So this showcases the importance of how each of this tracking helps you understand and predict your revenue in a much better fashion. And once you are able to achieve that, this essentially helps you as a leading indicator for revenue, and also helps you better predict your revenue. And at the same time, you would not burn cash beyond what you expected to burn during the year, right? So So this is one of the topic which I want to talk about. And any Venkat, do you want to take up any questions on this at this moment, or just skip to the next topic? I don't see any questions at the moment.
I think we should probably switch to the next topic, Narasimha. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Venkat. So the next topic, which essentially I want to talk about, was how do we increase the productivity of employees, right? So if you look at SaaS companies, obviously, once you get the ability to predict your revenue, there are two major cost items for any SaaS companies. One is the people cost, and the second is probably the infrastructure or the software cost, right? So if I talk about the people cost, it's not. I don't think you get optimized by by giving lower increments or doing something which when it comes to cost side. But the important lever that we focus on is essentially how do we increase the productivity of each employee, right? And we've deployed various methodologies or tools to do that. One important tool which I would mention probably was an OKR tool. So fortunately, we did adopt this tool before the COVID started. So there is something called X to 10X, which is one of the Bindi Bansal's startup, which helps you plan your OKRs in a much better fashion. For people who doesn't understand what OKR means, it's basically nothing but the objectives and key results. So how do you align your company objectives across different teams that you have in your company? So you have high-level company objectives, and then you get into the key results that are expected from each of the teams to achieve your overall company objectives, right? So this was something which we had practiced before COVID world, and that had helped us immensely during this remote work. It's very important to collaborate and do things in a much collaborative fashion to achieve the results that the company expects to achieve. And I would definitely say that this helped us impact or increase the productivity of our employees to a marginal extent, right? I think I would not have asked for a better tool. If 3 years back, none of us had heard of what OKR means. And now I think this has become a DNA of the company on doing everything aligning to what the company wants to achieve, right? So this also gives a lot of visibility to each of the team, how they are contributing to the overall company's objective. So that's one which essentially which I want to talk about. And increasing the productivity doesn't necessarily mean only aligning the people to company objectives. It obviously also comes with a combination of multiple factors. Another important factor that we focus on is employee satisfaction. And we have done multiple things to essentially achieve this. We do a lot of founder hours every week, so which means anyone in the company can book a slot and speak to the founders on any new ideas or concerns, or it could be just normal chit chat that they want to do with the founders on specific things, right? So, and we take a lot of anonymous feedback from people on how we can further improve the employee satisfaction. And I think that helped us a lot in understanding the things which are blind spots for us as a company, which are at least not visible to the senior leadership, right? So I think a couple of other things which I think probably most of the companies are already doing is town halls. Town halls is very, very, and obviously there are multiple tools which you could use within town halls, right? Like, we use Slido, which could help you post any anonymous question from any of the people participating in town hall. So town halls essentially town halls with rewards within the same quarter definitely helped us align across the company. And the other thing which we did again to increase the employee productivity or employee satisfaction was something called Speak Weeks. This was something which we introduced during COVID. So essentially, this helps connecting between the reporting manager and the employee to ensure both are on the same page, right? I mean, typically we tend to speak to the employees during the appraisal cycles, which is not the right way to do. And I think connecting it more regularly across the team every quarter definitely helped us understanding what the employee is looking for and where are the areas where we need to invest upon. And the last portion, which is more tactical and may not be really in automation, which I want to touch about, was the infrastructure cost, which is one of the, again, major costs which most of the SaaS companies incur. It could vary anywhere between 10 to 25%, depending on the nature of the business of the SaaS company. So obviously it is on the little higher side for us because we track a lot of data from our customers and we track a lot of actions that each of the users doing across the customers, right? So we use AWS and GCP, and obviously people could choose their own cloud partner, but I could probably touch upon how we were able to change the supplier mindset to a partner mindset. So when you work with a lot of cloud partners, obviously a lot of these cloud partners are very big in size, and they come up with very large sales teams, right? Some of these guys have thousands of salespeople just within India, right? So the ability to make them part of your extended go-to-market team was very important, and we were able to successfully achieve with our cloud partners at least. So most of the cloud partners today have their own quota retirement. So let's say if a cloud partner is suggesting or referring your solution to their customers, they retire their quota, right? Which means obviously it's the objectives and the incentives are directly linked, because as we grow, the cloud partners grow, right? So how do we make them effectively a partner in your journey and increase your revenue by partnering them in your GTM strategy, right? So that's one thing which definitely helped us um, get into a lot of, I would say, customers across the traditional businesses at least. And some of this also, some of them, if you're a SaaS company and spending more than $1 million in with your cloud partner, you could definitely enter into some kind of a discount program, which some of these companies call as enterprise discount program. And I think Rajiv probably would definitely know things about this, because Freshworks obviously is one of the largest SaaS company in India, and they spend millions of dollars with any cloud partner. And so if you ask me, all these things, so at least in the cloud or the infrastructure component side, definitely it has, by doing these tactical things, it has helped us improve our EBITDA by more than 20%, right? And maybe Raju want to speak to me in separately on how how we did this, but yeah, so definitely it helped us increase our EBITDA margins by more than 20%. And the other two items I spoke about, which are predominantly helping us predict the revenue better. So I think that definitely kind of helped us in essentially managing or effectively getting to the net cash burn of where we want it to be, and not basically controlling your own destiny, right? So there's no ROD, right? So if you are able to control your own destiny on what you could burn, and what is that the investments required, and where do we invest in the right areas, I think that's where it gets you to. And productivity is again, essentially which helps you essentially do more things with less people. If you are able to do with a lot more things by giving that employee satisfaction and increasing productivity, I think no one could ask for better, right? So these are the broadly 3 points that I want to cover.
This is really good, Nrsimha. Thank you for sharing some very practical tips with us. So really, I think where you're going with this conversation is to say that EBITDA and cash improvement does not necessarily have to be through cost rationalization. The first one was more around revenue optimization, where you talked about HubSpot and Salesforce. And the second one was team member productivity, where you talked largely about X to 10X. And you also talked about a few engagement tools. So one was Slido. The other one where you talked about the connectivity between the supervisor and the team member. I couldn't quite get the name of the tool there, Nrsimha.
Oh, that is more, I would say at the time we are doing it more manually, but we are looking, so we use Darwinbox for it. So
Darwinbox. Okay, Darwinbox. Okay, got it. Okay.
That's what HR tools probably would have heard of.
Got it. And the third bucket that you talked about is on the IT license and infrastructure cost management, where one was AWS. The other one was what, JCP? Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's Google Cloud Platform. It's one of the Google Cloud. Sorry, I used probably the synonyms.
No. I just want to be sure that we heard it right. Yeah. Thank you so much. And just a quick note for the audience. These tools, I just kind of shared the links on the chat. Okay, so whoever wants to kind of take a look, please do take a look at the chat box, and you can decide to kind of do your research a little later. Thanks for this, Nrsimha. If we can quickly move on to you, Adeep, for your comments, please.
Sure. So let me start with telling everyone about what PeelWorks do. We essentially provide an app to about 27,000 odd registered Kirana stores across the countries. We are focused on the big cities. So like Venkat mentioned, top 5 cities in India. We keep rationalizing cities, keep moving in different geographies, keep experimenting with products. Simply because it is a low margin business, and product mix is very essential. Therefore, tracking each product, its pricing, margin, its the ability to figure out what sells, when it sells, and at what price it sells is what drives the business. So we very quickly realized that getting GMV in this business was not a challenge at all. It's basically how much capital one can burn, and we basically transitioned to a inventory-led model from a marketplace model in the middle of COVID, primarily driven by we got a lot of capital from the RPG group, and it was very clear that to fulfill the requirements of the customer, it is important to have your own inventory. So the factors which I mentioned: A, low margin business; B, your own inventory; C, a very large assortment; and D, presence across 25,000-30,000 kirana stores, means that we have to target and plan for each SKU moving across the country, right? So tech has played a very key role in helping us do that. We've reduced pilferage and focused on high margin products to the extent that maybe a couple of months back we were burning almost 3.5 crores a month, and this month I think we will end up burning a few lakhs, or maybe we will break even. So a lot of effort has gone in terms of choosing the right geographies and tracking what makes money, right? So therefore, things like QR codes, we shifted from Zoho to ERP so that everything can be tracked properly. And the other thing which I wanted to talk about, of course, was the importance of working capital in our business, right? In the end, it's business needs which drive the need for tech, and our focus on the Taiki app, where we encourage customers to self-order, has also been a key driver of the business. You want to invest in tech, especially in a business like ours, where geographical reach is important, and you're trying to effectively cover, you're implementing a model in let's say the top 5 cities, but eventual goal is to go pan India. And therefore, tech in terms of the whole idea of replicating across the country and this pure scalability of the model becomes very important. And therefore, we've invested a lot in making the app A, user friendly, and B, its ability to integrate with other vendors, because we are trying to get more and more partners into the business, get more and more fintech players, and therefore your API's ability to link with other vendors, and the whole fintech play which has happened in India has been a real boon for us, because we've been able to use UPI, use QR codes, etc., to integrate more and more partners onto our platform to provide credit to the kirana stores. So it becomes kind of a win-win situation. But tech obviously plays a very key role in all of this. The other topic which I wanted to talk about was, given this is a business where there's a lot of physical movement of goods, right? So we have our own fulfillment centers, we have our own trucks running. So therefore, it becomes very important to optimize on working capital. We've done a lot of work in this area, and the same things which I talked about, using QR codes and using UPI. I think UPI has been an absolute game changer for everybody in this business, especially on the low ticket items. That the fact that cost of money transfer is zero and it's instantaneous saves us almost 2 days, which we were losing because of checks getting lost, checks getting cleared across cities, across different banks. And it makes a big difference when you're doing, like I said, we're doing almost 100 crores of GMV. Now we're probably doing about 50 crores, but we're break even. So when you do 1 or 2 days on a large GMV number, it makes a difference in the tens of crores, right, in terms of the capital one needs. And therefore, it's been very important for us. Self-ordering is something which I like to talk about, because, like I said, tech is the scalability of tech and reducing feet on street in a business which requires a lot of physical movement of goods is very important. We use AI and ML, to predict which goods will be sold where, which season, which day of the week, etc. And it's all about data at the end of the day. The more data one has, the better the output will be. And but it's important to get the engines going. So AWS and I guess Azure both have plenty of libraries and utilities built into them for ML to be implemented very rapidly and with very little code. We use that extensively, and over a period of time, we expect this to, again, inventory, like I mentioned, is a big thing for us, and getting to customers on time, products which we don't need to store for a long time in our warehouses, this is the way to go. So these are the things I wanted to talk about. Venkat, over to you.
Thank you so much, Atif, and congratulations on getting very close to break-even. It's always a significant milestone, right, in the evolution of any enterprise. And I think some very good points, Atif. I think to me the key takeaways were how automation could be extremely helpful on the business side. Particularly, I think with your Techie app, what you've been able to do is to kind of cut down on the wastages, which in a low margin business can have a massive impact on the EBITDA and the cash flow. And you also talked about how automation has helped you to reduce the inventory days, which again, from a cash flow standpoint, so it's really almost like a double whammy on the positive side. Both the wastage reduction as well as the fund flow improvement that you've been able to achieve. And you also touched upon a point somewhat similar to what Narasimha did, which is to talk about the revenue optimization. In your case, the utilization of machine learning to be able to predict consumer behavior is what I thought was really interesting. So thanks for sharing those insights. If you can now come across to Rajiv, please, if you're able to share some of your perspectives, that would be great.
So thanks, Venkat, once again. So I'm with Freshwork, and Freshwork is now 10 years old company. It was started in 2010 with one customer in Australia who was our first customer, and today we are having more than 40,000 customers across the globe. So this company is headquartered in the US, and we have offices in Europe, India, of course, where we have the biggest facility, Australia, and other countries, including other countries in Singapore, in Asia. So as I mentioned, that the company started around 10 years back, and now we are serving more than 40,000 customers. And it is not easy to, serve all these customers unless and until you have the right kind of tools with you at the back end. So I would say till 3 years back, company focus was how we serve the customer the best, and the company invested a lot of money, capital on having the right tools from the business perspective. And then 3 years back, we thought that now it's time that our backend processes, including finance, HR, customer support, they should also be as efficient as our market-facing processes are. And that was the time we started looking into our processes closely, trying to make it more efficient, trying to have better controls in all of these processes, and at the same see that as we are scaling, how what kind of tools we should have in place which solve all of these issues which I just spoke about. So Narasimha spoke about revenue stream, and so I would like to say something about from the cost side, maybe our spend management tool. What kind of tools we implemented recently, and what is our outlook for the future. So right now, we're using tools like Coupa, which was implemented around a couple of years back, which is basically a spend management tool, vendor management tool, and this tool help us right from the right from the time when any department would like to buy something, and so they raise a simple document called PR. It is getting approved by the right authority, which is defined in Coupa system. Then we of course receive the invoice. Matching happens by the AP team. So now most of these things are happening automatically, and before that many things were happening manually, but now with with this kind of system, things are happening automatically. And at the same time, this is giving us a lot of benefits. So a lot of benefits, like you can say now, uh, the name is called as spend management. So you are able to manage this spend. Uh, I think 5 to 10%, cost savings straight away come from there. Some of the time, when it has to be approved by the right authority, they say that perhaps this spend is not required at this point of time, and it is straight away rejected by the right authority. On the top of it, now since we have integration from end to end, right from the stage, when PR is made to the time, when payments are made to the vendors. So a lot many efficiencies are coming in the system, right? We are able to make payments on time. So suppose if we talk about metric like on time payment, so that is now close to 100%, in our company. And so I won't take an example of only my company, but this is a general rule in finance, which I think audience can pick up. If you are able to, like we always speak about customers, but if you are able to serve your vendors well, if you can demonstrate that like all of their payments, will be on time, you can always, demand for better rates or better commercial from these vendors. And this is something, which we try to do here. Uh, Most of the payments, as I said, that like all the payments are getting on time, and then that build a confidence, between vendors and us, and that helps us, getting the better rate from vendors. And again, in terms of efficiency, in terms of saving, you can say that has given us maybe around 10 to 15%, saving in in the vendor commercials. We have tools like, right now, we have more than 3,000 employees, somewhere around 3,500. We are going to grow more. This number can go up to 4,500, by end of 2021. So we should have, right kind of tools, to manage these, like T&D reimbursement kind of thing for these employees. And so we have invested in tools like File and Expensify. These are tools which we're using as of now, and that has also helped us like enhancing the internal customer satisfaction. And now our processes are much efficient, and automatically it is saving a lot of time also, both at the employee and also at the uh, finance team also, is ultimately approving these payments, and then ensuring that all the payments are going on right time. Taking a clue from Narasimha when he spoke about OKR, so we are also having the similar tool which is helping us making the goals for all the employees in the beginning, and then it's a tool which is helping us in collaborating with other departments, because some of the times goals have to be common. So we have also implemented OKR tools. We recently implemented Slack, which is again a employee management tool for us, helping us to collaborate among the employees, in a very efficient manner, and especially at this point in time, when most of the employees are working remotely. So that tool is also helping us. Company, in order to measure the employee satisfaction index, we started, having engaged survey a couple of years back. So again, there's a tool for that, and it helps us to measure, to gauge the sense of the employee's happiness, and that is again helping us a lot. So there are multiple tools, like in terms of, in fact, we are changing our ERP altogether. So now company has reached to a scale where we think that we should have a good ERP. So we are using right now Intact, which is a US-based tool. And since our headquarters is based out of US, we have to do reporting as per US laws, US regulations. So we implemented Intact around 2.5 years back. But now we are implementing NetSuite. And I think go live will go somewhere in 2021. And the objective was again that, how process has to be integrated, what kind of, automation should be there, that ERP should be giving to us, and how it can enhance controls also, like so in fact, there were two objectives, when we were implementing our new ERP. One is that process has to be efficient. At the same time, control should not be diluted. So how to have balance, between these two things? I think this this is a challenge for any finance guy, and I think NetSuite is helping us, to meet this objective. Other than that, we are using various BI tools, which is helping us to get report on time. Again, right kind of integration between the financial KPIs and the business KPIs, and how these two can talk to each other. So I think now we have gone beyond a stage, when we we keep on making these reports manually or on spreadsheets. So we need to have some kind of tool. BI is helping us a lot, and we are using the BI for that. In fact, 3-4 things which I have learned over my couple of years experience, with Freshwork while implementing all of these tools. And as I said, that we have invested a lot in last couple of years. Is that when we think about like implementing any automation tool, I think we should not just talk about the tool only. I think we need to look at the process as a whole. In fact, number one step is that if we have to clean up certain processes, if we have to do some kind of hygiene in those processes, I think that should be done first, and then we should implement a right tool for automation. No use automating a bad process, because if we do that, we are not going to get the desired result. So I would say it's like 50-50 thing. So 50% time should go about refining, re-engineering your current processes, identifying, what are the roadblocks there, or what are the inefficient steps over there, how they can be eliminated, how they can be made more efficient, and then, doing the right kind of implementation. Policy framework also plays a major role over here. So before implementing a process, I think we should have a policy framework. So for example, in our case, I just take example of O2C. We started, putting a lot of efforts in having the right kind of policies, whether that is discount policy, whether that is pricing policy, because these policies give us, rules around a process, and then that process can be automated in the system. So as I said, that we grew from 1 customer to 40,000 customers, from 1 country to, I think, almost all the countries we are having now are customers. So finance guy, along with the business guy, should always look at that, which tool is relevant for us. And when we say that, which tool is relevant for us, we should not look at only at our current volume. I think we should anticipate that, what would be our volume in the next 3-4 years time frame, and that tool should be sustainable, right? Because as business processes are scaling up, if you don't have a tool which is scalable, you will definitely are going to have problems in future. How these tools are aligned with the business objectives, I think very, very important for us, because finance can't implement a tool which is working in isolation, and it is not aligned with the business objective. So these are certain things which goes beyond automation, but I think very important whenever we think about any tool, or whenever we implement any particular tool. And more than tool, I think small automations which can be identified, which we can work along with our internal IT team. Small automation, but sometimes they give big benefit. So try to identify that, how these small automations can be done. Team members who are working at the ground level, sometimes they give excellent insight what thing can be automated. And maybe we have developed a concept called micro projects, wherein we give liberty to line staff. They independently go to the IT team and then do the micro project and try to automate the processes in-house. So this is what I can say we have done in last couple of years, especially in the finance area, and result till now are satisfactory.
Got it. So this is super helpful, Rajiv, but I think some very important takeaways here. I think particularly the last thought that you shared, that when you're thinking about your automation journey, you're not solving for today's problems, but you're solving for problems of scale that you are likely to encounter in, say, 3 to 4 years' time. I think it's a very important takeaway. Also, I think what was different about your remarks is that you also approached this a little bit more from the cost side, whether it came to spend management, whether it came to expense reimbursements. So, and also I think some very simple things, right? I mean, you raise a PR and you figure out that the guy who's approving it is saying this buy it maybe after 1 month. I mean, end of the day, it's a cost saving, it's a cash flow saving. Also, I think a very underrated area is vendor satisfaction and the impact of that in terms of what rates you're able to negotiate from them. I mean, sometimes it's got nothing to do with credit period. I mean, just the fact that they got visibility into figuring out, when they are going to get paid or what stage the payment is being processed. I mean, can actually give you a few basis point savings, right? So I think several important takeaways. Thanks for that, Rajiv. We are clearly running against time, and sometimes this is what happens. With a high profile panel like yours, there's so many ideas. Right. I mean, this section was supposed to have got over at about 5:20, 5:25. We're already at about 5:43. But nevertheless, I think a lot of takeaways. Once again, to the audience, if you can direct your attention to the chat box, several of these tools have been shared there. Please feel free to kind of post in your questions. Right. We'll probably run a first poll at this point. Murtuza, if you can quickly run that. Okay, and if you can run the second poll as well, if you don't mind, Murtuza. Yeah, so this is helpful. I think clearly it looks like most of the attendees are planning to automate something, or are in the middle of automating some of the processes. But on what process it is, I think the results seem to be somewhat mixed. I mean, it seems to be spread across procurement, vendor invoice payments, sale funnel management, MIS, customer and vendor contracts. It still kind of gives you a sense. I mean, I don't think there's any one particular area that is kind of really standing out. Yeah, I'll quickly move on to the Q&A segment, and if you can request Madhuri or Murtuza to please put up the first question, that will be great. Yeah, so maybe I'll start with you first, Rajiv. How does one kind of go about thinking about ROI on an automation investment? And typically, what is the threshold? I mean, would you say that, look, if you get a 3x ROI, I mean, just kind of picking a number, it's a good deal and you should go ahead. I mean, what's the right way for people to be thinking about this?
One can be straight away the financial ROI. You know that you are going to invest X amount of money in this particular tool, and then what kind of financial savings or improved revenue or cash flow saving you are going to get out of that. So depending on your company, you can always see that, that or our payback period, will be what. I have seen companies, like it ranges from 2 to 3 years, where company think that, okay, if we invest so much of money, payback, should be this much. So that is about the financial ROI, but apart from financial ROI, I think you should look at other things like qualitative things, improving controls. Okay. As companies are going big, then you have to invest a lot of, I would say, you have to think about like corporate governance, and then correct financial reporting and all that stuff. So I think maybe these are the qualitative factors which should also be considered when you think about like ROI. But from the financial angle, I always said that, as I mentioned, that it could be 2 to 3 years payback time frame.
Got it. Okay, so you're looking at it in terms of the payback. Atif, Nasimha, would you like to kind of weigh in with your comments on this topic, or if there's nothing new to add, we could go on to the next question.
I can just probably say that just don't only look at the financial ROI for sure. Please understand some of these investments actually helps you scale the company faster. If you get delayed on this and not invest into the automation at an early stage, I think that's gonna impact you in the long run, right? So some of the tools may actually not give you any financial ROI, but helps you essentially efficiently do your growth in a much better fashion, right? So just don't look at only financial ROI is what I would say.
Got it. Atif?
Yeah, I think in the end, it's about financial ROI now and financial ROI in the future, right? I mean, if you are building a scalable business, then without automation, it is just a story, right? So I think everybody from an investor perspective or any analyst, if is tracking your company, will want this to happen, right? Especially in today's world, unless you are doing something in the field of tech and automating stuff so that you can scale effectively. I think you have a tall task ahead of you. So I think this is an imperative, and you cannot look at immediate improvements or immediate ROI. You have to project going forward and look at projected returns.
Got it.
So Venkat, I just want to extend, my statement here. When I spoke about the ROI, I was talking about the financial automations or automation which is done in the financial space. And when we talk about business, sometimes we don't have a choice, right? To have the right kind of tools with us, because without those tools, business can't function, right? So when it comes to business automation or business facing, processes, perhaps, we have to move beyond ROI definitely over there.
Sure. No, I think that's fair. I think it's very hard to kind of try and measure everything through a financial metric. But I think that's a very good point you made, Raju, that probably we should kind of distinguish between what are like absolutely business must-haves, where, obviously it's you can't really apply a financial metric, vis-a-vis certain other investments where you would want to kind of see a payback before you greenlight a project. Fair enough. Madhuri, can we go to the next question? Right. So what is the right way to think about capital allocation for automation projects? And maybe if I can come to you first, Atif, because you also made a very interesting point about the time horizon, right? Because you're saying there are some things that you need to do here and now. And there are some things that, you maybe are making an investment today, but, the results will kind of come over a period of time. But end of the day, even if you raise funds, it is still a finite amount of funds. So how does someone like you, a CFO, take a decision on which projects to greenlight and which one should not be greenlighted?
Right. Like you said, I mean, this is what a CFO's core job is, right? I mean, as you automate the job of a controller and audit, etc. I think this is what finance professionals ultimately have to do, which is capital allocation, right? So while the CEO's job is always to push for growth, as a CFO, you have to look at capital allocation and see what makes sense and what doesn't, and prioritize, right? And then you take a call where does the money end, and the projects which are below the dotted line fall off, and the others go through. This is actually always a difficult question, because tech for most people is a black box, and people in tech like to create an impression that it's all very difficult and cannot be understood, and you have all the fancy languages in the world, and all the terms which we are well aware of. But in the end, it's all really simple stuff, right? And the best part about tech is that it's automating itself, right? Coding itself, like I mentioned, on AWS is the easiest thing to do. And languages, if you ask anybody, the most difficult language is C++, which we did when we were engineers, right? And the easiest languages are languages like Python, which are used now. So, it's all about drilling down and figuring out, what takes what, how much money, and whether you have the correct budgets in front of you. I think I have often cut tech budgets by more than half and done the job better. So I think that becomes very, very important. And the trickiest part is that you have different divisions in the company, each pushing its own automation project, right? And it becomes more about personalities and figuring out who to discount by how much. So tricky job. It's not a straight number. I wish it was a straight number, but it's not. But then this job will also get automated, and CFOs will have nothing to do. So yeah. So really, I mean, this is. I think this is what defines how a company grows and what happens going forward. Because the initial immediate decisions on ROIs are relatively easy to make, but what you do in terms of building a product which is scalable. I mean, NPCI in front of us is a beautiful example of capital allocation and building something and investing in tech and the product and then growing it to what it is. So yeah, very tough one, not a straight answer.
Got it. To be honest, Atif, and just on a lighter note, it's like me asking my mom how she makes her sambar.
Absolutely.
And she says, look, I can't write and give it to you in a recipe. It just happens. So what you seem to be saying is, look, this capital allocation is more art than science.
Absolutely.
And this just happens, as you said. I mean, this is a soft issue of which department head's request should be discounted by how much. I mean, how can you develop a framework to define this, right? So this is the skill that I think CFOs will hold very, very close to their heart. Till such time, as you said, technology will come along and probably replace that.
Automate this also, yeah.
Fair enough. If we can move on to the next question. Okay, is AI and ML overhyped, right? And you kind of look at LinkedIn, for instance, and there's so much material now on this. So it'll be good to kind of get a quick 30-second reply from all three of you as to how much of this is actually being utilized right now as a part of your automation tech strategy, and how much of it is still kind of at a planning phase. So maybe I'll start with Narasimha first.
Sure. So I would probably put it to a context. I think applying ML to 100 data points may not actually yield anything. But if you can apply that same AI or ML to probably 100 billion data points, it actually yields probably some accuracy that you would want to expect, right? So I think it all goes to the context, because we ourselves build a lot of AI ML projects for our customers, right? When I say AI ML projects, when I'm sending a communication to a user, let's say all three of you have done some action, I would probably understand what is the right time to send a communication to each of you depending on your past behavior, right? So it all goes with the context, I would say. If it is a small number of data points, I think I don't think it's of any use or of less use. But if you're talking about analyzing billions of data points and building something through these programs, I think definitely gonna help you.
Understood. Rajiv?
So I would say that, it's certainly not overhyped. I have seen processes which are routine and transactional oriented processes like P2P or payroll or some components of O2C like billing and collection. Bots, stroke AI works very well over there, and these processes are very, very successful. In fact, we are also thinking about like implementing bot, not immediately, but perhaps in near future once our new ERP stabilize, and we are definitely going to believe that like these processes will be value adding to the organization.
Got it. Atif?
I actually think it's underhyped, not overhyped, but only to the extent that the past can be used to predict the future, right? So the moment you have to do something creative, obviously it doesn't work, but 90% of our jobs is repetitive daily routine work, right? And at the end of the day, both these terms are used together for a reason, right? I mean, AI per se doesn't really exist at the moment. If you expect a computer to think on its own, that will not happen. AI works on the basis of regression analysis on past data, which is ML, right? So in the end, it's relatively simple stuff, but it's massive computing power on huge amount of data, and ultimately this is the future, right?
Got it. No, this is helpful, gentlemen. As we kind of wind down to the last 5 minutes or so, I'm going to request Murtuza to share our feedback form. I request all the participants to probably, it takes about 30 seconds. If you can take the time out to fill it, it'll be very, very helpful. As I mentioned earlier, we do these sessions every month. So your feedback is always helpful to make these sessions more useful to you. If we can move to the next question, Madhuri, please. Yeah, so this is a question on IT transitions, right? And one of the challenges we always face when we work with clients, we kind of dealing with these automation projects day in and day out. Is sometimes the limitation is not really in the technology anymore, but when you kind of try and deal with the change management, we're kind of up against people's emotions and insecurities and anxieties and agendas and whatnot. And I thought it'd be useful to kind of get a quick perspective from all of you on how does one kind of really deal with this transition. So it could either be a manual thing that is kind of getting automated, or it could just be from one tool to another tool. Yeah, so if I can probably come to you, Rajiv, and if you can request you to just kind of keep your comments really short, maybe about 20-25 seconds, that will be great.
So I would say it's about working together, like business team should not feel that this is a finance project and finance is implementing of its own, and the same time finance should give confidence to the business that it's a collaborative thing, and we are working together to achieve the business objectives rather than, uh, I would say a specific function objective. So if that thing is done, I think it always, give confidence to the business that this will help them, and it's a win-win situation.
Got it. Okay. So your comment is really about this should be seen as a business project, not as a finance or an IT project.
Yes, yes, yes.
Atif?
I think it's all about simplification and making sure that everybody understands that it's all about processes, like Rajiv said, right? It's less about tech and more about defining the processes, and it's all about simplifying it to the level where you as a finance person can understand what tech is doing, right? I mean, like an ERP, we all know how it works, but all major tech products are simple, right? Slack is simple, everything which generates value is simple, right? So the moment you feel that you're doing into a complicated transition, I mean, it could be ERP itself, right? And you can see that multiple people have to approve, multiple people have to fill in data. Always run away from complications, keep life simple, and it's simplicity which always wins.
I think that's such wisdom there, Atif. Thank you for sharing that. Narasimha?
I think both of them added enough on this. Keeping the interest of time, we can move on to the next question probably.
Fair enough. Then, Madhuri, do we have any further questions at all? Okay. I think this is a lot more generic. I mean, what parameters should be considered while choosing tools? And I'm sure things like budget and time to implementation, time and effort to implementation would probably kind of figure as the top one or two. But are there any frameworks that you have used? I mean, are there any standard frameworks that are available out there that can help in evaluating tools and taking a decision on which one should be green lighted? Narasimha, you want to go first on this one?
I think it a lot goes into the context, Venkat. Then obviously, if you're looking for a tool to automate your sales funnel, the parameters will be different. And again, obviously, as you mentioned, it's more generic. But broadly, if you want me to touch upon the broad metrics, I think one important thing that we understand is the use case solving ability of the tool, right? Like, defining clearly what are the problems that we're going to solve by getting into this tool on board, and whether each of these tools can help you solve that, right? I think that becomes one of the important ability for us, and some of these tools actually we were beta users for some of these tools. I mean, we don't know whether they, right? If you ask me about 10x goals, which is okay tool of X to 10x, I think we were one of the first few beta users for them. And even with finance tools, like let's say Happy, when they started probably 4 or 5 years back, we were again one of the first beta customers, right? So some of this, just we started with an idea of solving the problem, and then overall it went on actually solving the problem that we were facing. But it's clearly defining the use cases and looking at the ability for the tool to solve those use cases, right? To keep it simple.
Got it. Okay, Atif?
Look, I think whenever you're building a big product, a large product, which will redefine what you do, I think what it is very important to always do is define what I call typically the product screen, right? What will it finally look like? And I think that for me is the most important parameter, that don't go out building something where the end goal is not clear. And of course, you have to look at things like cost, etc., which is obvious. But define output first, and then look at the inputs.
Rajiv?
Yeah, so nothing more to add from my side. I think Nasim and Atif, and you summarized very well.
Got it. Okay. Madhuri, are there any further questions? I know that we are kind of, okay, so it looks like we don't have any additional questions. So just wanted to thank all the panelists for, I think this is really one of our rapid fire type webinars, where ideas are flowing thick and fast, and they kind of covered so many different areas. I mean, right from customer engagement to pipeline management to better predictability of customer behavior to spend management, expense reimbursements. We kind of covered a lot of ground. We also looked at some of the business side tools that Atif touched on to help reduce wastages, to help reduce inventory days. So I think it's been a fairly wide-ranging session. I was also mentioning to the panelists that this is probably the first time that we don't have a chartered accountant because it's so common to kind of see a CFO who is a CA. Today we have, I think, had very different perspectives, right? I mean, each one of our panelists today comes from a very different background, and it was refreshing to kind of look at areas that are not necessarily kind of quote unquote in the finance domain. I think a lot of the issues we discussed today were really more on the business side, right? So the key takeaways for me from the session, this seems to be, and this is again kind of very much validated with our own experience with our clients, is automation is a journey, friends, right? I mean, it's not a one-time event. It's not, you implement something and then you can forget about it. It's really a lifelong process, right? So you got to kind of almost weave it into the culture of the organization. So organizations that are focused on evolving, on getting better than themselves every day. I mean, I think you're not really up against competition. You're just against an older version of yourself. I think companies who think of automation as a lever to enable that, I think will always find areas that they can work on. We had some very interesting thoughts on the ROI. We looked at the merits and demerits of using a financial versus a non-financial lens. We also saw that in many cases, the investment is really a must-have in the business. You can't really look at a payback. I mean, you just need to do it if you want to stay relevant in the market. We also looked at some of the challenges around change management and how these projects need to be looked at as a business project and not really as a finance or an IT project. We also had words of wisdom on how to keep things simple. Start with the end in mind when you're commencing these journeys. I think this is really kind of a distilled, highly potent session of takeaways and learnings that we have had from three really high potential individuals who are kind of gone out and experienced what an automation journey is in their respective companies. We have shared several links with you on the chat box, and we have made an attempt to kind of cover as many questions as possible, both that came here as well as on the live channels. But if there are any additional questions, please do write in to us, and we will do our best to answer them. Thank you once again to all the audience who's kind of stayed back and attended this session. We hopefully will see you in the next month's automation webinar. Yeah, thank you once again, Narsima, Atif, Rajiv. Truly touched by your sharing the time with us and sharing your insights. We are hoping that we will be able to do another session with you sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Venkat. Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. See you all. Bye-bye.
Yeah.